As I said at the top of the show, we're going to talk to the president of the North Carolina Association of Educators, Mark Jewell. Mark, thanks for coming on.
Keith, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, well, I mentioned at the opening, this is the first week for most students who are on traditional calendars in our public schools. And I wanted to just ask you, you're a teacher. Yeah. I mean, I think people see you on the news or read about your paper as the president of NCAE, but you've been teaching for how long?
This is my 32nd year in public education, and boy, does it go by quickly.
All right, well, I think I actually have a picture I'm going to pull up on the screen, Mark, of that you shared on social media. Yeah. Back there you are.
Yeah,
look at that fresh-faced Mark Jewell. Actually, I got to say, you look exactly the same.
That was at Murphy Academy in Greensboro. My class, that was a 4th grade class there, and I'm still friends with those kids. They're grown now, but we stay connected.
Well, let me ask you. I mean, you're in a different role right now with NCAE, but I mean, the first week, first day of school, does it still, I don't know, butterflies, excitement?
Always, always. And I just love seeing all the posts from our educators out there. You just can't sleep the night before. It's one of those careers where you get to have a fresh start every year. And no matter if you're in 1 or year 32, it is that excitement to be able to have such an impact on the future of North Carolina.
Right. And you mentioned, you came here. I knew this because I've heard you talk about it before. You moved to North Carolina to teach here in this state.
Absolutely. In 1997, I taught in West Virginia for 10 years, but obviously North Carolina was moving forward in public education. We were growing in our school system. We were investing in educator salaries, but also in resources for our students. And I came here in 1997 because of that investment.
Which is, I think, a good transition to the Teacher March. 3 months ago, we came out, actually, this show, we came out with our camera. I think I talked to you. We talked to a bunch of teachers. There was the conversations I kept having with teachers was about the lack of support and the lack of resources. What did you want to accomplish with the march? We're showing some of the scenes now on the screen. What did you hope to accomplish, and I guess what have you accomplished?
Yeah, May 16th, we couldn't be prouder of the tens of thousands of educators, of parents, of community members, of businesses that joined together and say, what had happened in North Carolina for the past 7 years of the chronically underfunding our schools is not the North Carolina way. So May 16th was about accountability. It was not a one-shot about educator pay, which is of course important and a priority, but it was about student resources. It was about safe schools. It was about recruiting the best and the brightest to teach our students. It was a 6-month strategy to make sure that we get policymakers on November the 6th. We're going to call it an ed wave, making sure that we get folks. We think public education is going to lead the priority ticket come November 6th, and we've got to get priority people there to make the policies.
Well, talking about priorities, there seemed to be there was a lot of discussion leading up to the march around teacher pay. Yep. And there's been some activity, and there's been some positive movement in some areas on teacher pay. But I kept hearing things more about per pupil spending and overall support. Is that the most important issue? Or, I mean, how do you rank them in priorities?
We're the 9th largest state in the country, and we're 39th in per pupil funding. We're $2,400 per student below the national average in what we spend for resources. Can you imagine if educators had $2,400 per student to spend on their students? This is why we haven't had a textbook adoption in nearly 15 years. That shouldn't be our new normal. This is why we have 40 students in a classroom in many of our school systems across North Carolina. That shouldn't be our new normal. That's why we have vacancies to this day, because we can't get certified educators. That can't be our new normal. So it's about funding and resources. And this General Assembly has made it a priority to invest in the corporate boardroom instead of our public classrooms. And the citizens of North Carolina don't feel that that's the North Carolina that we deserve.
Now, I don't know if you saw this. There was a survey out this week. I think I saw it in USA Today, but that 2 out of 3 Americans now believe that teachers are underpaid. It was actually, the question was around some of the walkouts that had happened like in West Virginia and Kentucky and Colorado. I mean, when you travel the state, what is your sense of where the public is and where teachers feel on the issue of their compensation?
Yes, they are struggling financially. We have a broken salary schedule that's created by this General Assembly that eliminated longevity and eliminated master degree pay. So we have a beginning salary that starts out around $35,000 and taps out about $52,000 or $53,000 now. If you look at where we were prior to the recession in 2008, the master's degree schedule was higher than what we have now. now. That is not enough to recruit and retain high-quality educators in North Carolina. So that's why we see a teacher shortage crisis. We've got to do better. The number one resource is that professional that's standing in front of our students.
Right. Well, it was a big showing, got a lot of attention. Did you accomplish anything?
Oh, we think we have. We think we have. We have gone back to our communities. We are registering voters. We're talking public education. We know that whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or unaffiliated, people love their public schools here in North Carolina, and we feel that we're going to make a strong impact. We're organizing our communities. We're going to do a Vote Together march this fall in October on a Saturday, where we're going to have a mass event to get people to the polls, and we feel that public education will rule the day on November the 6th.
What do you think? Look, I mean, we've had a number of legislators, Republicans and Democrats on. They all seem to say they love public education and teachers. I mean, is there a disconnect? I mean, is there a misperception? Do you talk to legislators and you have your folks that talk to them? Do they have a different impression? Do they say than you think is reality, or what is it? Or is it priorities? What is it exactly?
Right. It's about priorities. And I tell people, watch what they do and not what they say. Watch how they vote. When you chronically vote to underfund public education, when you're sending millions of dollars every year, $3.5 billion is left on the table come January. What should be going to public schools? That's about priorities. And our schools and our school districts are starving because of that. We've got to start reinvesting in public education and make that a leader, not only in the Southeast, but across America, where people come, businesses even. We used to be in the top 5 where businesses want to come here to relocate. We've dropped to number 9, and they cited that as because of the lack of investment in public education. Businesses and public schools have thrived for decades in North Carolina and made us strong, and we need to return that.
All right, last question for you. What's next? You mentioned the election. Obviously, there were some rumors and some chatter after the march that, that there might be walkouts or things. And obviously, this is first week of school. Nothing like that's happened. Do you think that we'll get to that point in North Carolina where it happens?
Obviously, we're throwing all of our energy right now to November the 6th. We're laser focused to making sure we're going to get public education policymakers elected that can support the governor's budget to return us to the national average in educator pay and per pupil spending. And then walkouts are never a priority. That's not what we want to do. We want to get investments there in public education. But obviously, we will look at after November 6th, and we'll see what General Assembly we have to work with. But we feel that we're going to have a pro-public education General Assembly come November 6th. Right.
Mark, thanks. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much for having NCAs at the table.
Absolutely. When we come back, we're going to introduce you to the superintendent of Johnston County Schools, one of the fastest growing districts in the state. But before we go to break, see if you can answer this question. In 2017-2018, the General Assembly allocated $8.93 billion for public education, about 39% of the general fund. What was the percentage of the general fund dedicated to public ed in 1970?
Education Matters is brought to you each week in part by Paragon Bank, serving others, enriching lives.